Okay, it is 9:01. We're going to go ahead and get started on this WebEx session. Good morning. Two quick housekeeping items. We've got everyone muted by default during the presentation. We'll be addressing questions at the end of the session, as we do have a fair amount of content to go through in half an hour. At the same time, feel free to submit questions online as well as at any point, and we'll go ahead and make sure to address these. My name is Brian Thomas. And on behalf of CED, Royal Wholesale, and CES, I want to thank you for attending this 5th session of our monthly application webinar series. The topic that we're discussing this morning is the standards and solutions that apply to the Food Safety Modernization Act, or also known as FSMA, and how companies in the food market can develop strategies appropriate for their operations. This presentation is delivered by Grande, one of our preferred integration partners throughout California as well as the nation. And at this point, Grande team will introduce themselves, and we'll go ahead and get started. Joe, go ahead and take it away.
Hi, my name is Joe Malter. I'll be your presenter today. I'm the manager for California for Grande. This presentation was put together by Jim Tolman, who is our lead consultant, manufacturing IT. He unfortunately had to be pulled away on something today, so you're going to get me here. So, all right. So just an introduction. Jim put this presentation together. He's got 25 years in the industry. Former Rockwell employee. He's director of Mesa International, and is a recognized practitioner. Mesa is a Manufacturing Enterprise Solutions Association. It's an international organization for manufacturers, producers, industry leaders, and solution providers who are focused on driving business results in the manufacturing space. What we're going to talk about today, we'll give you a brief overview of Grande. What is FSMA, or the Food Safety Modernization Act, and then how you could address FSMA using technology. We'll do a brief overview of a case study, and then we'll take on some questions and answers. Grande is a system integrator founded in 1980 with 9 offices in North America with about 180 employees. And we recently opened San Francisco office and have other offices along the West Coast, along with the Midwest. We are one of Rockwell's solution partners, and in multiple disciplines. To give you a brief overview of where Grande plays is we're involved in all parts of manufacturing, primarily in the food and beverage, and within the life sciences and consumer goods. On the left side of this display, you'll see things like building automation, warehouse management, batching, process automation, and packaging. And on the right-hand side, and this is an area where we may differ a little bit from some people, we get involved in manufacturing and business intelligence with large companies and small, and helping them with their application and initiatives from a consulting perspective. So one of the things we do is we're involved in the industries, and we provide what we call thought leadership. As I mentioned, we're a solution partner, one of a handful in California for Rockwell, in all their disciplines, from information systems, process, control, and safety. We work with leading industry companies such as VMware and Cognex on the vision systems. And as far as some of the industry things, I did mention the MESA organization. We're also a CSI certified integrator and a TUV certified, which applies to our safety practice. So that's a little bit about Grande. So what is the Food Safety Modernization Act? It's actually a law that was introduced in about 2010 and has just gone into effect recently. It now introduces the FDA into regulations associated with food processing. It's really about making sure that that food is safe from the producers to processing and shipping, and it applies in the U.S. and for people supplying from outside. And it gives regulatory authority to the FDA, who's the same organization responsible for pharmaceuticals. So what is the goals of the Food Safety Modernization Act? It's really consumer protection, incident prevention across the entire supply chain. And an important factor is, to be able to have rapid response. So the FSMA, covers a multitude of areas, from facility registration, import requirements, third party. But we're really going to concentrate on two areas here where automation really plays a factor. And those are in the hazard analysis and prevention and controls, and in traceability and record keeping. The Food Safety Modernization Act, first I just want to give you a few dates. So you see the three things on the left, the rules: preventative controls for human food and food for animals, and produce safety have gone into effect this year, or the rules have been finalized this year. The actual compliance dates are in 2016, and smaller and very small businesses have a few more years to comply. So how do we address food safety with technology? Well,
actually, Joe, real quick, what would you define, from a FSMA standpoint, what would you define as a medium business or a small business and a very small business? Is that dollar volume? Is that size of or number of employees?
Yeah, it's both, and it's pretty well defined within the FDA. And there's, if you go to the FSMA website, it'll tell you specifically, and it is on dollar volume, and it's like very small is, I don't know, I don't want to quote numbers, but it's a mom and pop shop, people making jam and selling it on the market. Small is, maybe a one facility type of place, maybe, a few smaller. So, but it's very well defined within the website.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So what role does technology really have in this? I mean, it's not a requirement to use technology, but what technology does is it provides, greater accuracy, consistency of product, and a really important thing is speed. How quickly could you identify that you either have an issue in the plant, or if something has been released that needs to be recalled, how quickly can you respond to it? And then, of course, it has to be cost effective and cost efficiency. So this is my favorite slide in the deck. It covers kind of a generalization. So you have the Food Safety Modernization Act is the regulation. The two focus areas I mentioned in the prior slide are preventive controls and forensics. Under the preventative controls, we have, undeclared allergens, foodborne pathogens, and unintentional alterations. There's also intentional alterations, and that's one of the 7 rules that will be defined this year. don't know exactly what that is. So then within these, we've got different challenges, whether it's, the packaging, ingredients. I apologize if there's some noise in the background. It's our office cleaning day for landscaping. So, so as we move forward, we'll talk about each of these different opportunities and challenges. The preventive controls focus on hazards and the methods of control. So under preventive controls, one of the first things is recipe management. And on this slide, you can see on the right-hand side, we have the information stack from, control systems. That's where your PLCs and flow meters and such will be. SCADA, your factory talk view and such. MES and ERP systems such as SAP and JD Edwards. So under preventive controls, recipe management is important when you're mixing multiple ingredients. Starting with automated recipe management, where set points are stored in database and introduced down to all the way down to the controls level. Center lining is used a lot in continuous process, where you want to maintain and identify, certain temperatures, pressures, things, set points that need to be monitored, and you're trying to attain that key baselining or center lining. And things like plant historians are very good for identifying how you're doing against targeted set points. Golden batch really applies to batch processes as opposed to continuous. And again, the batch recipes could be coming down from an S88 compliant type system through either your ERP, your MES, down to your control system, and then reported back up as how you did against that golden batch. Material verification, is from processing orders and receiving bills of materials. The MES systems are used to help dispatch and run an order against material verifications, making sure the right ingredients are known, and scan and verify that's using RFID and barcodes to make sure that the right products are getting introduced. Years ago, I did a project using actually, data line, a Rockwell data line display to assist an operator in placing the proper ingredients at the right time in a mixer. This was for vitamin application in the food process. Just using SOPs did not work well for the operators. We helped them walk through by using a display and push buttons to verify. And now we're using barcodes and RFID as both automatic and manual products are being introduced into the food stream. The verification, another preventative controls is supplier verification. When raw materials are brought in, that they're verified as a certificate of analysis through the system, and then cross-checked through a lab information system. And these are all technologies that Rockwell has different solutions for that allow you to make sure the supplier data is as expected. I mentioned SOPs again. SOPs, standard operating procedures, something most companies have, and it's very important making sure your operators are following the proper procedures. And we're getting into automatic procedures stored and displayed. Again, pushing down from MES down into the control system. Providing what we call role-based pre-flight checklists. So before you start a process, have you gone through and checked off to make sure the process is ready to get started? Following up with that, we get into things like role-based CIP, clean in place, where there's a checklist and verification. CIP is an important part of food safety, as different types of chemicals are introduced into the process that need to be removed and verified are, both have sanitized and taken care of the process, as well as that they've been cleaned up so that food or product could be reintroduced into the line and vessels. Label verification is a big one we're seeing a lot now with vision systems in particular, where the label images are verified to match the product being produced. We've got several cases where clients have had misapplication of the spool of labels to the product. It's very important that this is identified and verified before product is brought out, to the customer site, and it causes a lot of rework if it's not identified early. One of my favorite products used in a lot of applications is a process historian, both monitoring the process and the environment. A lot of products need to be verified that they're both within storage, within the process, and within transportation, that they're kept at the proper temperatures in particular. That historians are very good for use in verifying that it has been compliant. MES is used, manufacturing execution systems, for performance maintenance and performance management to capture and analyze run rates and time of an order to completion. This is both used to make sure that products aren't in conditions for longer than they should be or shorter than they should be. And then, of course, system alarming, SCADA alarming, tracking of acceptable limits, and making sure an operator is aware of the problem and can respond accordingly and has the information necessary to move forward with taking care of alarm conditions. I'm still on preventative controls and process quality control using statistical process control and with MES quality management systems. These tend to sit more on the MES ERP level. Within preventative maintenance, preventative controls, preventative maintenance, failure detection and equipment. This is pretty important because sometimes equipment may not operate optimally. We've seen cases where equipment gets damaged and maybe some metal shards appear. Sometimes there's glass breakage. Sometimes we've seen belts and conveyors, providing debris that could end up in product. So preventative maintenance is actually feeds into the food modernization and safety quite appropriately. And setting up mean time between failure and mean time repair to make sure that equipment is running effectively. And then the term that's been used and a lot of companies are using, OEE, overall equipment effectiveness, is a good measure to identify how your plant is doing, and what you could do, what you could do is measurements to see where you can make improvements. And then tracking downtime and time in a step. So if you have a batch and the batch is only supposed to last 1 hour and it's either too short or too long, being able to identify it through time and state. So next, we said that there were 2 major areas. There was the second is the track and trace. So there's internal and external tracking events. And on the surface, this seems pretty straightforward, shipping and receiving, and then you transform a product by taking input to the process and producing something, and depletion through consumption and disposal. On the surface, it seems pretty simple. This chart really puts out a lot of more detail of what really should be tracked and traced within an organization, and it's not trivial. But there are some good tools within the Rockwell tool set to take care of this. And again, fast forensics through MES, through products like Metrics and Vantage Point to help track materials through the process. So I'll do a quick case study. I know we're running tight on time here, and the case study I'm going to use here is Hillshire Brands with I think it's Jimmy Dean's sausage. This is a well-documented case study, and if you go on Rockwell's website or Brandtech's website or just Google Hillshire, we were actually hired to help reduce the amount of tighten up the filling of the sausage packages to try and reduce overfill or waste. And from that, through our process analysis, we discovered a food safety issue where the sausage wasn't cooked to the proper temperature and within certain parts of the chug, they call it. And we were able to spot that and make sure that their system is more compliant. It was identified using Historian and Vantage Point. And now it's allowed them to have both higher confidence in the quality of their product and help them save quite a bit of money on overfill. So with that, I think we are more or less around where we wanted to be. So I'm going to open up to some question and answers.
Yeah, and actually, Joe, Brian here. Just one real quick comment that I'll make is I was actually looking on the FDA website this morning, and right on the public website, it actually lists the 2015 recalls, market withdrawals, and safety alerts. And just in the end of December 31st, Thomas Produce, there was a recall on cucumbers. Wigman Bocconi Fresh with octopus salad, American Pure Whey protein, Watrim Plus, dietary supplement. That was all the last week of December. So, there's a lot of these food safety events are publicly posted on the FDA website. So there's, from a visibility standpoint, from an organization, you want to obviously put out a quality product as well, but it's also from a standpoint of customer relations, from a social media standpoint, the reputation of the company. So it's, putting a quality product out there, but it's also the public side of it as well. It really kind of plays into the whole FSMA compliance.
Well, yeah, Brian, I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the big differences is, HACCP has been around for a while, and it crosses a certain segment of the food industry. But now that the FDA is involved, there's no such thing as a quiet recall. Companies could not put something out and quietly recall if they believe there's a food safety issue. It will be made public. And, as you say, image, has a lot to do with it. I wouldn't want to be in Chipotle's business right now. It's they're in the news every day.
Sure.
The FDA now can audit companies at any time, and one of the big differences between HACCP and the Food Safety Modernization is you have to add methods of control. You have to have more accountability. There will be inspections. And the bottom line is the FDA has more legal power now. Not to scare people.
Yeah, so I guess to that point, what really are, beyond from a social standpoint, what are the implications of non-compliance?
Well, non-compliance is, again, the public and legal potential for involvement. You will be, if you are non-compliant, you will be subject to more inspections. And inspections do have consequences. So by showing that you have both methods and records of what you're doing, you stand the better chance to pass audits and show that you are using controls to avoid or to minimize the hazards.
Sure. Well, and to that point, one question I did want to ask, and then we'll open this up further, but since Grande has performed several projects, essentially directly related to FSMA compliance, just from a real brief standpoint, can you share some best practices in regards to how companies can, essentially wrap their heads around how to start with this process?
Yeah, that's a good question. It really needs to be part of a larger effort of the company. And I'm assuming that most of the people on this call are in the automation space. I mean, that's where Rockwell is. And this really isn't about applying a piece of technology or hardware or buying a new machine. It's really what people could do is look at the industry standards such as ISA 95, which is the MES, or Batch 88, to implement solutions that provide greater visibility and information to support the company's food safety organization. So it really needs to be part of a larger piece, and as automation engineers, we could help the people within the company. That So as far as like Grande, we take a consultative approach in partnerships with Rockwell and such to provide a leadership position to help you from the start. It's really, as we walk through all those slides, it's really backup and support methods that companies could apply to both make a better product, to reduce costs, and to keep them, out of the public eye where they don't want to be for these kind of things.
So are there any other questions at this point for everyone else on the call?
Yeah, I missed an acronym, actually, to OEE and TIS.
Okay. OEE is Operational Equipment Effectiveness. It's a pretty common term that applies to, it has three aspects to it. And it's, some companies, there's a standard kind of for how you calculate things like uptime, downtime, changeovers, quality, and things. There's pretty standard formulas for it that can be either done manually or if you have PLCs and automation, a lot of this information could be generated through products like Plant Metrics. and vantage point. So it helps. It doesn't solve problems, but it gives you a benchmarks and identification of where you are. TIS is just time and state. So if you're running a batch process, you've got optimal times that are desired times and bands for being in that state. So it's time in that state and what's acceptable and what's not.
Got it. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Well, and I think we're actually right about 9:30, and we said we were going to hold it to half an hour, and we're actually there, so I'm impressed with us. So thank you to the Grande team for presenting, and for everybody that attended. If you'd like to have additional discussions on this or related topics, please feel free to reach out to the Grande team or to your CED, Royal Wholesale, CES sales reps, and we can, of course, discuss these further. If there's no additional questions, we're going to go ahead and close out the session now.
Okay, thanks, Brian.
Okay, thank you so much.